Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. So I like to point out, each and every morning, it expands our base. Clearly, the big story of the morning is Jeffrey Epstein, and the White House now calling for the release of certain grand jury testimony. First of all, let's be clear, it is not the White House who can release grand jury testimony. Second of all, it is only a court that can do that. And of course, the grand jury testimony was not what was asked for. Let's be crystal clear. The president and his attorney general and his deputy director of the FBI, and indeed his director of the FBI, all claimed that there was information that had to be released immediately that would prove, well, heaven only knows what. You will note that Donald Trump, in his appeal last night, did not call for the release of the information that has been requested. Talk about the ultimate deflection. I mean, what more can you say but that if Donald Trump wants to put this whole issue to rest, he needs to open it all up? I am reminded that what brought Richard Nixon down was not the Watergate break-in itself. What brought Nixon down was the cover-up, the obfuscation, and there is no doubt in my mind that what is happening now with Donald Trump is precisely that. He has no choice, if he wants to preserve his credibility, but to order the release of the information which his base demands, and which his attorney general demanded, and which his deputy director of the FBI demanded, whatever the Epstein file is. And as for the material published by the Wall Street Journal, the so-called birthday letter, 50th birthday letter to Epstein, let me also suggest, let's just let it all out. We have the denial from the president, but I'd like to see what it was. And if in fact it was not Donald Trump's, we need to know who produced it and who released it. Now you might ask me, John, why are you so engrossed in the Epstein matter? Well, you will note I have not been engrossed in it, but you cannot now avoid the fact that the White House is thoroughly embroiled, completely, unambiguously, and that their credibility, the credibility of Donald Trump and his administration, is clearly being compromised every hour that this scandal goes forth. I call it a scandal, not because of Jeffrey Epstein and what he did. Epstein has already been convicted, and as we now know, Epstein is dead. But what is the scandal is the administration in disarray trying to respond to this situation with a growing cry by Republicans, including the Speaker of the House of Representatives, a staunch Trump ally, for the release of all pertinent information. He was joined in that by former Vice President Mike Pence, who said, enough is enough, just let it all out. And if, in fact, Donald Trump does not want to let it all out, and I would say that releasing grand jury information is simply a deflection, which, by the way, Donald Trump can't order. But he can order his Justice Department to release all the information. And if we want this to be put to rest so we can deal with the serious issues, well, then I would suggest Donald Trump better get to it. And I listened, frankly, to a member of the United States Senate who argued, look at everything Trump has accomplished, everything he's done, everything that he has. Well, I thought to myself, you could have made the same argument about Richard Nixon in 1974. Look at all the things Richard Nixon accomplished. Really quite a remarkable record in foreign policy and domestic policy. But it was not the record that mattered. It was the scandal that was evolving. That is the lesson the Trump people need to understand. There is a lesson here. Let it all out. There is a second issue that I would like to deal with this morning, and it was a headline that came from the Associated Press. group declares an emergency for civil rights. And it turns out the president of the Urban League and other civil rights organizations are now demanding a new resistance to what the Trump administration is doing in relation to civil rights. The National Urban League Annual State of Black America report accuses the Trump administration of being, and I quote directly, increasingly determined to sacrifice its founding principles and, quote, threatening to impose a uniform education system and a homogeneous workforce that sidelines anyone who doesn't fit in a narrow, exclusionary mold. This is what they are saying. And the concluding line, if left unchecked, they risk reversing decades of progress that have made America more dynamic, competitive, and just. The report really says this is not a random action. This is really an action against the civil rights of millions of Americans. And I have to tell you, that is something that needs to be understood. And you know that the Trump administration has said many, many things, but the policies they are now advocating now, in the view of many, are discriminatory, are unconstitutional, and there needs to be a recognition that race is a factor and that it is something that the Trump administration denies. So this is the other big issue that I think needs to be addressed. Of course, there are so many issues in foreign policy. We're going to watch now what happens in Ukraine with a new prime minister. We're going to watch what happens in the Middle East, where things continue to be explosive. And, of course, Around the Political World with John Rothman is covering all of this. In a sense, I'm sorry there's a weekend. But, well, we must bow to the simple realities that the news keeps coming. And we at Around the Political World with John Rothman will continue to report it. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. You can interact with me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and, of course, you can email me directly. And, of course, that is what helps me to hear from you. And, of course, my special appreciation to the wonderful producer of this podcast, Gogo Zoger, who performs magnificently every single day. Did you hear that, Gogo? I mean it. Okay, have a great weekend. We have a lot to cover. I am going to see Superman this weekend, and I can't wait to see it. All right, I am John Rothman, and you are listening to Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you on Monday.